It's October 24th, 2022. It's our new moon lunar observance day. So the Patimokkha was chanted earlier. Ajahn Ñāṇiko chanted the Patimokkha. 39 minutes, which is considered quite fast. The weather's with the fire season in California. Brief talk this evening on why we follow these precepts. So whether it's translating it, because as we live in the monastery, we gain a sense or gain for people just anywhere in the world. These talks, I'll say karma, because if nobody sees me do it, then it's okay. If nobody finds out, then it's okay. But we see ourselves do it, so there is somebody who sees us do it. We know what we're doing, what we're up to, what we're doing in private. So Dhamma practice, when Dhamma practice starts to mature, our behavior will start to become more even, whether we're in public or private. It won't really matter so much. So this is a quality known as hiriyottappa, where we realize we don't truly get away with anything. It's a very necessary, very, very important foundation for practice. Or we could just think of it as acknowledgement of the results of karma, acknowledging that there's a result to our actions. So that quality of hiriyottappa is very, very, very important. Also kind of fun and interesting to reflect on perception, sankhara, which we normally translate as mental formations. Perception, I like to reflect on perception. One is that perception is impermanent. Another quality of perception is that it's not self, it's not ours, it's a mental phenomenon. It's built up by causes and conditions. So the way we perceive things, the way we perceive each other, and the way we react to our perceptions. So when we interact with somebody, say we decide we dislike somebody, that's based on a perception. So perception makes the world go round. Perception is what we're attracted to and repelled by. Perception is what we're chasing. Perception is what we're running away from. And yet it's perception. So it's like we're chasing phantoms. And the Buddha talks about this in the suttas, that there's this, what's called subha sanya, the perception of the beautiful, and then there's asubha sanya, the perception of the unbeautiful. And these two things are related to yoniso manasikara, which is wise attention or skillful attention. Then there's ayoniso manasikara, which is unwise attention or unskillful attention. So there's these different types of perceptions, and there's also the way we attend to them. And using skillful attention, using our awareness skillfully, learning how to use it skillfully. So there's a quality connected to hiriyottappa, how we use our awareness, what we pay attention to. There's a place in the suttas where a certain bhikkhu goes and asks the Buddha, why is it here that some monks stay ordained for their whole life, and why is it here that some other monks disrobe? And the Buddha says, yoniso manasikara, to the sign of the unbeautiful, the asubha nimitta. So there's skillful attention to the sign of the unbeautiful and unskillful attention to the sign of the unbeautiful. So we give skillful attention to the sign of the unbeautiful in order to overcome infatuation, longing. The mind is out of balance, the mind is hot. So we use skillful attention toward the sign of the unbeautiful in order to cool down. And if we're prone to becoming irritated and angry and frustrated often, then we need skillful attention to the sign of the beautiful. And that's what we call metta kammatthana, or metta practice. That's skillful attention to the sign of the beautiful. In this case, the sign of the beautiful is goodwill, thoughts of goodwill for oneself, thoughts of goodwill for others. We can get creative with it, with this idea of wishing ourselves well. Sometimes we have to see with discernment how we are, where we are not wishing ourselves well, and address that more directly. Because we might say to ourselves, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be free of anxiety. And it's already October, it'll be November, it'll be the end of the year. Time keeps passing inexorably. So that's developing perception of impermanence, perception of inconstancy. And this is sacred as well, because we don't have to get depressed when we think about impermanence, because we might think, well, all these good things I have, they're not going to last. But there's the other side as well. All the unpleasantness isn't going to last either. None of it lasts. The good, the bad, the pleasant, the unpleasant, none of it is lasting. It's always changing, it's always in flux. The world is always changing, it's always in flux. Internal world, the external world, it's always changing. There's no real refuge we can take in any of this. So it's coming back to taking refuge in awareness, taking refuge in the internal Buddho awareness, the knowing, the one who knows. That's the only true shelter, the only true refuge. Even if the world on an external level somehow gets worse and worse and worse, and we might feel a sense of dread. And that sense of dread, that we're reacting not to anything external, we're reacting to our perception of the external world. And so that sense of dread, well, even if things get worse and worse and worse, even if our worst fears come true, it'll change, it'll get better at some point. Or even if somehow things get amazingly better, that'll change, it'll get worse at some point. There's these cycles. We can't take refuge in any of it. Or we can, but if we do, we suffer. So the way of non-suffering is to take refuge in awareness and skillful attention. Based on that foundation of Hiriyottapa, that's the very reason we take the precepts. It's for developing this quality of Hiriyottapa, whether in public or private. Being able to look after ourselves in a wholesome way. It's for our benefit. This is metta for oneself. Yeah. Developing Hiriyottapa, looking after oneself. It's some very important qualities for the practice. And I'll just leave it there, a short reflection for this evening.